Welcome to the JCPS MTSS Toolkit training on modes of instruction and student practice with a focus on problem-solving teaching. With me is April Bimker. She is with AIS Zone and she works with middle and high school. And I am Dominique Dobson-Penn. I'm also with the AIS Zone and I work with elementary schools. Please take a moment to write down the case-sensitive bit.ly so you will have access to all of the links and the training in the future. Here you will see the 6 components that make up the MTSS department or multi-tiered systems of support. MTSS focuses on overall school improvement by aligning resources and support for both teachers and students. We provide multiple levels of support for learners that address academic, social, emotional, and behavioral needs, and produce professional development that is aligned with schools and the district as a whole. This concept map shows a visual of the departments within MTSS. The MTSS Academic Department provides teachers with Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention and academic support. The supervisor and point of contact for this department is Donna Lawson. The MTSS Behavior Department supports schools in implementing school-wide behavior systems and frameworks within PBIS and restorative practices. The supervisor and point of contact for this department is Sandra Hensel. The goal of our department, the MTSS Engagement Department, is to increase student achievement by equipping teachers with high-yield instructional practices to maximize student engagement. The department leader and point of contact of our department is Dr. Naomi Rahim. Here are the 6 MTSS toolkits. By clicking the toolkit image, you will have access to the MTSS department webpage and each toolkit. The Modes of Instruction and Modes of Student Practice toolkit is focused on the manner in which teachers provide the components of instruction. It is divided into 2 sections that include the modes of which teachers deliver instruction to students during the body of a lesson, and the modes with which teachers facilitate student practice in authentic ways. To be clear, teacher modes of instruction must occur prior to practice, as the intent is the teacher sets the students up for success with more authentic and independent activities. The high-yield practices in this toolkit will equip teachers with the tools they need to be well-versed and fluent in both these areas so that their students achieve at high levels. Today, we're going to focus on one mode of instruction, problem-solving teaching. Successful implementation of this instructional practice is observed when the teacher demonstrates explicit strategies through problem-solving teaching to model logical steps to solve a problem. As defined in our toolkits by John Hattie, teachers that teach problem-solving teach a set of logical steps that maximize the student's ability to solve novel problems. Problem-solving is really teaching the strategies to use in solving problems. It is explicit and direct in its delivery. Take a moment to think about your own practices. What problem-solving strategies do you explicitly teach to your students, and what do you do when your students are stuck? As we continue on through this presentation, be mindful of your reflection. In this session, we will learn explicit learning solving teaching strategies to use in our instruction. The success criteria for today will be to identify how you can utilize problem-solving teaching in your classroom. Here are some basic principles for teaching problem-solving. You want to model a useful problem-solving method. Problem-solving can be difficult. Show students by your example how to be patient and persistent in how to follow a structured method. Discuss your method with your students. Keep in mind to teach within a specific context. Teach problem-solving skills in the context in which they will be used. Use real-life problems in explanations and examples. Do not teach problem-solving as an independent, abstract skill. Help your students understand the problem. In order to solve problems, Students need to define the end goal. This step is crucial to successful learning of problem-solving skills. If you succeed at helping students answer the questions what and why, finding the answer to how will be easier. Take enough time. When planning, allow enough time for understanding the problem and defining the goal, dealing with questions from you and your students. Making, finding, and fixing mistakes, and solving entire problems in a single session. Ask questions and make suggestions. Ask students to predict what would happen if, or explain why something happened. This will help them to develop analytical and deductive thinking skills. Also, ask questions and make suggestions about strategies to encourage students to reflect on the problem-solving strategies that they use. Link errors to misconceptions. Use errors as evidence of misconceptions, not carelessness or random guessing. Make an effort to isolate the misconception and correct it, then teach students to do this by themselves. We can all learn from mistakes. One problem-solving method that can be used is design thinking. Design thinking is an innovative approach through problem solving, utilizing a step-by-step process. There are 5 key steps in this process as shown in this infographic. We will discuss the steps after watching the video of design thinking in action shortly. In this video, you will see a 2nd grade class work together through the design thinking problem solving framework at the Design 39 campus. Students learn to empathize with others around the globe while solving real world problems.
Let's see what happens.
You get really sick of it.
Oh, look at the water.
Yay!
Because they've been exposed to design thinking at such an early age, that creativity has just blossomed. They can really think outside the box, and they really feel that there is not a problem out there that they cannot devise a solution for.
Do you want to drink that?
No.
See what you can do to redesign it. At Design 39 campus, we want our students to be working on real-world work in real-world ways. Design thinking is an innovative approach to problem solving, and it's a step-by-step process designing for a specific purpose or person. Because it's World Water Day, today's design challenge is creating a water filtration system using natural resources.
In design thinking, the first thing you have to do is empathize. If you don't do that, you won't be able to make the right thing for the person. This morning, we watched a few videos to see how other people get water.
It was about a girl that had to walk 4 miles to get water and 4 miles to get back.
And her back was aching because of that heavy bucket of water on her head. We just have to get a glass of water from the fridge.
After we showed them the video, we just shared some facts with them. Worldwide, here's how many people don't have access to clean water.
In the video, what did you notice around her? Some of the natural resources around her.
A bunch of sticks and plants.
So could she use these items?
Yes.
So for the research part, we needed the kids to experience these natural resources. What happens when you pour water through sand? What happens when you pour water through cloth?
Did it get all of the dirt? Most.
After research, we'll define the problem. A lot of times they need to come up with the definition. What is the problem that we're trying to solve? With this one, we had a problem already defined.
So our problem is people who do not have access to clean water need a way to filter water so they don't get sick from it. What's next?
Brainstorm different ideas.
When students are ideating, we talk about rapid ideating. We don't want them to waste too much time kind of working through one idea or adding a lot of details. It's just, what if I made it this way? And what if I changed it that way? Oh, so you're saying to like layer some of those materials? Then they go ahead and prototype.
This is not your final building. It's like your model, so when it comes to your real one, you know what you're gonna build.
Walking around to the tables, you hear students starting to combine different ideas.
Drawing it first shows how you're gonna build it.
Now we will connect the pipe right here.
So now they have their paper model, it's labeled, so they can go and get the supplies needed and start building it.
We need a clock.
The prototyping when they're building it can be sometimes the quickest part. They have it all planned out, they know what they're building. After students prototype, they're excited to jump in and see, how did my prototype work?
What number would you say this is for turbidity?
We brought out a turbidity scale, which they would be looking for the clarity of the water, and then a ppm device, which would measure the purity of it.
So even though water might be clear, it still might not be safe to drink.
What do you see, Brandon? What number? 985.
If it fails, you have to see the problems and make it again.
The final stage in the design process is we'll have them upload into their digital portfolio. Sometimes it's about publishing results that didn't quite work so that others can learn from it.
Publishing could just be sharing out to an audience. What would they change, or what was challenging about the project? How did the group work together?
And you guys took both ideas and made it into one. And how did that make you feel, Emma?
Starting design thinking at a really early age, they'll take more risks. They start learning goal setting, problem solving, perseverance.
First attempts don't always work out. It's okay to fail and try again, because then you actually are learning something like, oh, this doesn't work, let's try this.
7:35.
I think it's good because it's not just thinking about yourself, but thinking about other people, and I think that's very important.
In the video, you saw second grade students work through tackling global issues utilizing the design thinking problem-solving framework. Empathize is when students learn about the audience from whom they are designing. Define is when students articulate the problem clearly and focus their question based on their insights from the empathy stage. Ideate is when students brainstorm and come up with creative solutions quickly. Prototype is the model and/or build representation of the best ideas to show the others. Test is when students evaluate, receive feedback, and then refine them as needed. And publish is when students share their outcomes with an audience. Other design thinking methods include reflection, so students may reflect on their findings. Before having students use the design thinking process, the teacher should model self-questioning for students. This slide includes student prompts that will aid students in using metacognitive strategies independently throughout the design thinking process.
George Polya was a mathematician who worked at Stanford University. He felt that students were not engaged in mathematics because it was not being presented in a way that excited students. He proposed that math should be presented through problem solving. So in 1945, he published a book, How to Solve It, which contains his famous 4-step problem-solving heuristic that is still widely used today. We've included his problem-solving principles on this slide, which include introduce the problem, devise a plan, and there are many ways to do that. Some are included here, carry out the plan, and look back. While Polya created this heuristic with mathematics problem-solving in mind, these 4 principles, and also some of the ways to devise a plan, can be used to solve any type of problem, regardless of content area, such as make an orderly list, look for a pattern, or solve a simpler problem. Also, step 3 is a great time to make changes if the initial plan is not working. It's important to explicitly teach students they may have to try many different approaches before they are successful. As Dominique talked about earlier, part of metacognition is applying a strategy to solve a problem and then being able to monitor the effectiveness of that strategy. The thinking prompts on this slide will help to aid students in self-questioning when using Polya's problem-solving method. One key component in teaching problem solving to our students is to stress the importance of struggle, emphasizing that possible solution methods or answers may not always come easily or quickly. We're going to watch a brief video clip where Joe Bowler, professor at Stanford University and author, discusses how allowing students to struggle can lead to higher achievement levels.
Researchers have studied people who've reached a very high level of achievement to see how they got there. And they found that nobody was born with a special brain, but they engaged in a very particular kind of practice. And the researchers described it like this. They said that the people who achieved the most were those who were always pushing at the edge of their understanding, making mistakes, correcting them, making more mistakes. They weren't getting work correct all the time, they were always struggling. They set high targets for themselves, and if they became stuck, they tried a different approach so that they could keep going. Researchers also found that there really are no limits to what people can do. When people don't go on to high achievement, it's usually because they give up, not because they've hit actual roadblocks that they can't get past. So always remember that when you're struggling, even if that can feel really hard, that's the very best time for your brain. And keep going. Never give up on maths. Always remember you can learn anything.
It's important when teaching problem solving to let students get stuck and figure out ways to get unstuck. As mentioned in the video, productive struggle is a sign that we as learners are growing. Teachers have to be willing to step back and allow students time to struggle, even when students ask questions right away or want to give up, and our instincts as teachers might be to help them too much or give them the answer. One way to help students is to share problems and highlight how the students, not the teachers, work through those problems. Also, provide opportunities where students can explicitly practice learning how, when, and why to use the problem-solving strategies we discussed earlier effectively so that they can become self-directed learners. Some other ways to help students with getting unstuck are create a list of strategies over time that students are using, and if they are struggling, help students name a specific process. And then tie struggles to specific strategies so that students will not only see value in working harder, but in working smarter by trying new and different strategies and revising their process. As you're teaching problem solving and letting students get stuck, it's helpful to create anchor charts with helpful ways and strategies to use to get unstuck. Here are a couple example charts. Some additional tips for teaching problem solving include have students identify specific difficulties or points of confusion. If students are unable to articulate their concerns, determine where they are having trouble by asking them to identify the specific concepts or principles associated with the problem. Have students articulate their process and work their problem out loud. This slows down the thinking process, making it more accurate and allowing you to assess understanding. Model the process, and as you work through the problem, consider how a novice might struggle with the concepts and make your thinking clear. As we mentioned earlier, allow students to solve problems on their own. It's okay to ask directing questions or give helpful suggestions, but provide only minimal assistance and only when needed to overcome obstacles. When allowing students to work in groups, they can frequently help each other, and talking about a problem helps them think more critically about the steps needed to solve the problem. And also mentioned earlier, try to communicate that the process is more important than the answer so that the student learns that it's okay to not have an instant solution. Let's take a moment to reflect and think about the following. What problem-solving strategies will I explicitly teach my students? What will I do when my students are stuck? Culturally responsive teachers realize not only the importance of academic achievement, but also that of maintaining cultural identity and heritage. Culturally responsive teachers build a classroom community through cooperative learning, differentiated instruction, peer teaching, and reciprocal teaching. Knowing the backgrounds or cultural norms for students within the classroom will lead to more engaging and effective instructional practice. This culturally responsive approach should be utilized to reach as many students as possible in the classroom. Utilizing a problem-solving teaching approach that we've discussed in this training will support this type of classroom community. Students with exceptional needs must practice skills with a high rate of success. Scaffolded supports are used to assist students who may not be able to complete a given skill independently. Opportunities for frequent practice are needed for students with exceptional needs to become fluent in a given skill. Many of the strategies we covered for problem-solving teaching, including providing a heuristic or step-by-step method, along with planning strategies, teaching metacognition, using anchor charts, and allowing students to work in groups, help all students, but especially ECE students, to be successful. Some considerations that teachers should make when using project-based learning include align instructional strategies to student learning needs, identify instructional approaches that will support students in understanding foundational knowledge related to learning outcomes, and ensure there is time for independent practice, which is critical for retention. So what's next? During an upcoming PLC, be sure to discuss ways you can explicitly teach problem solving and problem solving strategies with your students. You can use the PLC High Yield Practice Planning tool that we've linked on this slide to help you with this process. On this slide, we have shared some additional problem-solving teaching resources. Thank you for joining us to learn more about problem-solving teaching. If you would like more information about the MTSS toolkits and other high-yield practices, please visit our department website. Have a great day.